The least heard people have the most important things to say. Our stories come from Appalachia. Our home is West Virginia. Together, we are telling it like it is. Together, we are spilling the Black girl tea.
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Spilling the Black Girl Tea, a storytelling project featuring Black women who call West Virginia home. I am Royce Lyden, and I am host of today's bonus episode, and I am joined today by Miss Staysha Quentrill. Did I say that right?
You
Staysha?
did. Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. The title of today's episode is Birthing Hope. We are going to discuss the joys of being a midwife, an Appalachian and West Virginia woman, and the ways we are thriving. First, a little bit about myself. I am co-chair of Justice and Jubilee, which is part of the West Virginia Faith Collective. We are a grassroots organization birthed and rooted right here in West Virginia. For more info, please visit our website, westvirginiafaith.org. On a personal note, I am a grassroots community organizer, and I am also a grandmother who lives a nomadic, itinerant lifestyle. I'm a coal miner's daughter and a person who deeply loves West Virginia. Staysha, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us today. Can you give us a little bit of your origin story and how you arrived in West Virginia?
Yeah, I would love to. I moved here the summer before my 8th grade year, from Oklahoma. I'm originally from Virginia, but we were in Oklahoma. My dad was going to seminary school to become a pastor. So I moved here the summer before my 8th grade year over a church. He was also a police officer here. And so I went through 1 year of middle school and then all of high school here. I graduated from St. Albans. And then I had gotten married, and actually had gotten pregnant first and then got married. And that's kind of really where my story starts, is because when I got pregnant at 19 was my first introduction to midwifery. And that is kind of how I ended up where I'm at now. That was a really pivotal point of my life and who I became as a person. But I've had 7 children. That's where I had a birth center and 3 of them at home. And I'm very passionate about midwifery and people being pregnant, but I'm also very passionate about parenting. And I think how you're taken care of when you're pregnant sets you up for a parent.
Okay. So did you say you have 7 children?
7 children.
And
Yeah.
what is the age range, if you don't mind sharing that?
Oh, everybody's getting ready to have birthdays, but at this moment, my oldest is 15 and my youngest is 2.
Okay, perfect. So, as you stated, you are a midwife in West Virginia. Can you elaborate a little more
Yeah.
on you being a midwife in West Virginia?
So I am a CPM, and that is a certified professional midwife. It means my knowledge is based in normal, healthy, low risk pregnancies. I chose to go that route instead of becoming a nurse midwife, which usually that means somebody has a nursing degree, and then a master's degree in midwifery. I chose to do an apprenticeship model with a preceptor over about 10 years. I worked with her. And then I sat for an exam through NARM, which is the National Registration of Registered Midwives, North America Registration of Midwives. And I sat for that exam and I tried to do a portfolio. And so there's 4 different phases, and each one has to be signed off by a preceptor, and then you sit for your exam, which would be like the equivalence for like sitting for a board exam. And so I did that and I got my certificate. West Virginia, unfortunately, you cannot have a license. There's no licensure pathway in West Virginia to be a CPM. And about 38, 39 other states, you can hold a license as a CPM. But West Virginia is not. We tried really hard last year through legislation to see if we could get a bill passed, and we made it really, really far. We got it out of the House, we got it out of the Senate, and we got it out of the committee in the House. And when it went to the floor on the House, it got stuck. So we'll try again next year, and we'll keep trying until we get it passed. But that's kind of where the where we're at right now.
Okay. So tell me what difference it would mean in your career to have that license here in West Virginia.
One of the biggest things would be that we would be recognized as a provider. Where I'm at, I'm actually really, really lucky. And with the preceptor that I had, she really helped me forge some good relationships. So I don't have as much pushback as what some of my other colleagues have. But right now, if we were to transfer into the hospital, sometimes they don't take our records. Sometimes it's harder to get certain type of care done because I'm not able to write an order. We're not prescribing anything or anything like that, but there are some equipment that I'm not able to get. I'm not able to put in a license number. So it's just a roundabout way of trying to get things done. It just makes it harder and not as smooth sailing as what it is. And eventually what would happen too is it would be nice to be able to have a license. Eventually we'd be able to work with insurances and hopefully be able to work with Medicaid. And so that would open the doors for midwifery for some people who can't afford it right now. Our fees are out of pocket. And so somebody has to be able to have the income to be able to do that, which yes, that can be hard on someone's budget. At the same time, it's a lot more affordable than having a baby in the hospital. And so from an insurance standpoint, we would be saving the insurance companies lots of money. If this would be something that they would prioritize and support and fund. But right now it's a really catch-22 spot that you're in.
So if I were a pregnant woman in West Virginia, what would be one of the first steps I would need to take if I wanted to seek out um, a midwife to assist me with my birth in West Virginia?
That's a great question. So we have a organization here called MOV, which is Midwives Alliance of West Virginia. You can go right on their website and there is a request form in there. You put your name, where you live, what you're looking for, and it sends out an email to all the midwives that are a part of that group. So based off of geographics, where you're located, midwives in that area will reach out to them. And then I always encourage people to interview who they're wanting to see if they align with what you like and what you want. And then you decide that, hey, that's who I want to work with. And then whatever their schedule is. Some midwives have offices, some midwives have offices at their house. Pretty much everybody that works in that or is in that organization, we pretty much have the same schedule. So we see you every month until you're 28 weeks pregnant. And then at 28, we see you every 2 weeks until you're 36. And then at 36 weeks, we see you every week until you deliver. But we offer labs, we offer ultrasounds, consults with other providers if needed. So it is the same schedule and the same care that you would get in a medical complex. We're just dealing with different, very low risk, healthy pregnant people. If somebody were to have a risk factor, then we would transfer them to an appropriate provider.
Okay, thank you for sharing that information. At the time when I was in the age of giving birth to children, I lived in a very rural part of West Virginia, and I wanted to have my children at home, but my OBGYN was not in favor of that because we were so far away from the hospital. It was an hour's drive. So I was not able to take advantage of that particular opportunity. So remind me again how many years you've been practicing as a midwife and the importance of being a midwife in West Virginia.
Yeah. So I am a relatively new midwife, not necessarily new to working in the birth field. I attended my first birth as a doula in December of 2012. And then started working with a nurse midwife that did home birth and worked with her for about 10 years. But I officially became a midwife in 2023. So I'm about 2 years into practice right now, but have been attending home births, and that's my knowledge base as far as midwifery goes, for about the last 10 years as her assistant and then becoming her student, and then doing the last year of practice on my own. it goes back to me, like, why is midwifery so important? I would say two reasons. One, for me, you know, it goes back to when I met the midwives that I met when I was pregnant with my first baby. Um, you know, depending on the way that you grew up and, you know, all those different cultural and religious, you know, things, you know, being pregnant and not married was a really big deal in my worldview. And so to be treated like an adult, or that not even being a factor, they didn't even bat an eye at that, and to be respected and to be given such a great example of how to make decisions and how decisions were laid out in front of me of, here are your options, what would you like to do. um it that changed me as a person. And when I had my first baby at the birth center, I can remember having her and thinking, there's literally nothing I couldn't do. I just did that. What there's like, I could do anything. And now, you know, she's almost 16, and now doing this job, I realized how much of a gift that was that they gave me. It was unwavering support. It was unwavering trust. And in a way, a type of confidence, steadfast confidence of almost like, you have no other option. Of course, you're going to do this. And that, now being a midwife, I know that that is a testament to that particular midwife's knowledge and skill and how long she had been practicing, because she did it in such a way that I had no idea she was even doing that. It was just this steadfast confidence of, oh yeah, you are totally going to do this. And after I had my baby, she whispered in my ear, I knew you could do it. I never doubted you. And to have somebody hold that for you, it literally did. It changed my whole life. Now I always knew I wanted a lot of kids. So I knew that I wanted to be a mom. I knew I wanted to parent. So I had the rest of my children pretty quickly after that. And so it going into my second pregnancy and second birth, I was coming in with this level of confidence and this level of, I've done this once, I'm going to do it again. And each time I got pregnant again, and each time I had another baby, I learned a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, until eventually, you know, I ended up going the home birth route. And that's transformative, you know, in and of itself, of um this very this it's almost like a very old ritual. You're doing something that we've always done, and you're doing it in your home, and you're doing it in um you know, there's moments where I go to a birth and I'll be like, oh my gosh, what if the power goes out? What if? And then I realize that nothing I uses electricity. And it like brings me back to like, yeah, because of course, like, we've been doing this for how long? We've been having babies without electricity for how long? Of course, you can still do that. And so there's just something that is very ritual and very ceremonious, very holy, and very much connects you to the whole world. And I don't know how to explain it, but I think that's what midwifery has given to me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm able to be here as a midwife right now. The second part of that is there are no Black midwives here in West Virginia. And that wasn't my goal starting out. That's not what I was thinking of becoming or doing. But as I got more involved in the birth world, and I've always been into social and racial justice, the two go together beautifully. And yet there's also a lot of racial and social injustices that has happened in the name of midwifery to Black and brown people. And I feel like that's the other part of this for me too. Not necessarily that I can heal anything, but I do feel like it's a calling, it's our calling, and almost like a birthright in a sense for Black and brown people who are doing midwifery. Right now, we have a real resurgence of Black midwives coming up, and being able to understand the history of why we are where we are at right now, with our maternal health statistics, but also understanding why now, after how many years, are we finally starting to see a big group of Black and brown CPMs that are coming back. And it's heavy and it's a lot. And we're making history. And sometimes I don't know if we know that that's what we're doing until it's already done.
Not only are you making history, but you're restoring and acknowledging our past history.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful realization. But prior to you becoming pregnant, was there anyone who planted seeds in you or nurtured you to develop that side of your life? Maybe not so much as becoming a midwife, but someone who nurtured that spiritual side, that wild side of you, that side of you that had a desire to do something different, to make a difference in the world.
I don't, being an adult now, looking back, I can probably, see parts of my parents and probably my dad that uh, that maybe I wanted to replicate, but I think I've always been this way. I think both my parents are kind of introverted. I'm extroverted. And so I've always been kind of just here and I'll talk and I don't care who it is. And I've always loved people. Um, and I I can remember my mom is white and my dad is black and I was 5 and my dad was in college and it was an African American History Day and I remember sitting in the audience and watching the performers and there were people there that were doing different dances from different countries in Africa and I remember just watching them just being like amazed by this and I think I said to my mom, "Oh my gosh, I wish I was like them," or it's something of meaning like, man, how do I become that? And my mom said, but you're black. That's your, that was the moment. You could have never told me anything from that moment on. That was the moment I knew I was black. And I knew that I was brown. I knew I had brown skin. I knew all of that stuff, but I was 5 and
Yeah.
watched it on the stage and being told, but that is your culture. That is you. That is a solidified moment in my brain that however you identify, that was my moment. I identified to be black from that moment. And it was such a profound moment for me. I had so much pride and so much like by watching this, it was almost like, I don't know if you've ever heard the term of like blood memory of that.
Yeah.
It was almost like that, a memory I didn't even know that I had, but my being recognized it in their being. And to do that at 5. So I think for me, social and racial justice has always been there for me. I don't think I ever had words to it. Until I started to get a little bit older. And then as I got introduced to midwifery and because I've always loved babies, I'd always was babysitting, I was always around babies. And so that's kind of what I had the draw to that. But then as I started getting involved in midwifery, I started seeing the parallels to social and racial justice. And while I still love babies, my reason now for being in midwifery is not so much the cute babies anymore. It's for the people and families that are having these babies. And even more so for them to be propelled into parenting in such a strong fashion that they will change the world because they're changing parenting and they're changing the lives of their children and they're healing from trauma and they're healing from whatever it is that maybe has brought them to that place that they're at now. It's very cliche, but we are changing the world one birth at a time, and it's not necessarily the baby, it's the person having the baby. And then from the baby's perspective, I always say, like, can you imagine being born into the hands of the person who loves you the most in the whole world? The first person to ever touch you is your mom or your dad or your grandma or what does that do to you as a person? I would love for us to be able to study home birth kids for, from the time they're born until they graduate college. What does that do to their confidence? Does it change them on a cellular level? I don't know the answer to that, but I believe that it has to change them as a person when everyone in that room, you're just treated with so much respect and love and kindness and celebrated. In a way that I would like to think that hospitals want to do, but I don't think are able to.
Yeah. Well, you made a couple different statements that resonated with me. First, your passion about social justice. I've just always been a social justice person at heart, and being in West Virginia, it presents itself in different ways. You also said that you were an introvert and also your parents were introverts. And I just think that's really interesting when you look at your father's profession of being a police officer and a minister. Um, but it's something that I understand when you make that statement. I've also like been in the pulpit as a certified lay speaker and minister, but I've not been a pastor. But I certainly understand that being the introvert and all the power that that carries for a person. So I think it's really profound when someone who considers themselves an introvert to step out on faith and step up to the challenge and do the thing that you're called to do,
Right.
and to
Introvert.
do
Yeah.
act.
I'm an extrovert. I like to be in, I performed in high school, and so I like to, I get energy from doing things. And so both of my parents, I would say, are a little bit more reserved side until you get to know them. But I would say I think my dad did have a love for people. I think that's one of the reasons I think he became police, but in all the but he had a love for he wanted her. And I think that's what drew him to being a police officer. And then from a young age he always wanted to be a so I being called, yes, there's definitely been moments where I'm like, oh man, is midwifery is it for me? Or I could do something else, but it's definitely a difference of being called to this work. Because it is spiritual. And sometimes I'm like, the only word I can think of is um it's such holy work. But sometimes it's like mind blowing that I get the privilege to be there and to be doing this.
So I know there's no such thing as a typical day in the life of a midwife, but can you give us a glimpse of some of your days, what you do?
Yeah, so like right now I'm not on call, but if I was on call, then that means I usually stay within about 30-ish minutes of my house. And that just means that, she could have her baby at any moment or any time. And so I have my car packed, it has my birth stuff in it. But then I do appointments on Fridays and Saturdays. And so I would see clients either in their home or at the office. And each appointment's about an hour. But and so that's like a typical clinic day. And so we're measuring your belly, we're listening to your baby, we're answering questions, we're educating, we're tweaking anything that might need tweak, we're doing vitals and blood pressure, but really we're getting to know each other and and planning what your birth is going to look at. We're making sure that you're still staying low risk. We're encouraging movement of your body, eating really good nutrition foods. And if there's anything that is feeling like a barrier to you, then we're trying to figure out ways to lessen that barrier. And if I don't have the answer to that question, then who can we get? Who can help us with this? But that's a typical day in the clinic. A typical day at home, I would say I probably get anywhere from 1 to 7 to 10 text messages a day from clients of like, oh, what about this? Or I'm worried about that. Where can I get this information from? And so it is this really nice balance of you are accessible to them and you're answering their questions. And also playing a balance of your own life of taking care of your kids. And so I love midwifery for that fact that, I am able to be at home with my kids and figure out a schedule that works for them, and also be able to answer clients in a really timely way because they have access to their provider in a much different way than what the medical model allows you to have access to a provider.
Perfect. And that's so encouraging, especially in today's culture and political current. I want to ask you what what is the importance of the midwife, especially in the encroaching healthcare crisis or desert for healthcare desert for West Virginia? I'm not sure if many people realize what that means, being a healthcare desert. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the importance of your role is in creating some balance?
And this is where, I think I have like dreams of like solving all of this. Like to me, it's such an easy fix. But a healthcare desert, and actually there's another word that they're using because a desert is just like a natural thing that happens. And what the word that we're using now means that it's intentionally being done. And I'll have to look it up and tell you what the word is. And that's kind of what's happening here in West Virginia is that there are a lot of maternity facilities. So like the hospital is still there, but they're closing their labor and delivery facilities because of there's not enough babies being born, they're not getting enough insurance payment, blah 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 blah. Whatever or maybe the hospital has just the whole hospital has now left. And so it's leaving parts, and actually a lot of parts of West Virginia, that they do not have a place to go for maternity care. And so some people are having to drive, 2.5 hours to get to Charleston. Well, that's where I'm right outside of Charleston, but wherever the next biggest place is that would have a birthing hospital. And it's like, well, maybe they could get prenatal care where they're at, but they would still have to drive to be able to have their baby at the hospital. And some of these places, because these birthing facilities have closed down, the in-house maternity services have also left. So now you have people who are trying to figure out, how do I even get prenatal care? Depending on what their work schedule is, depending on, do they have access to a vehicle? Do they have childcare? Do they, whatever, a lot of different factors go into this. They might not be able to make that drive.
Right, right.
And so they are choosing to go without it. They are coming to the hospital, in labor, and that just makes a really hostile situation for everybody. They can be prejudged because, oh my gosh, why wouldn't you get prenatal care? And then I would say on the hospital side, they're having somebody walk in that they know nothing about. And that can be really scary. And we don't really have time to talk about it at that moment because now we have to have a baby. So now we have to do all of these different things because we have to make sure that you're okay. But that can be seen as kind of condescending and kind of rude and kind of all these different things. And both of these two groups of people are coming at this from different viewpoints. But in the moment where we should be promoting joy and peace and rest and safety, and because we're trying to have a conducive environment for physiological birth, we're not getting that at all. So midwives, CPMs, I think that we could be such a great use of one being placed in these places that we would call maternity care deserts, and that we could offer prenatal care. We're not even talking about home births right now. We're just talking about prenatal care. We could offer prenatal care. They would still go to the hospital to have their babies, but they would go with, or we would fax before they were even in labor, their entire record. So they would be going in with their entire record. I've had an ultrasound, I've had blood work. This is all of my stuff that I've had. We've consulted if we needed to. And so that transition could be a much better transition. They go and they have their baby, they come back to their community, and we pick up their postpartum care. Now, the second layer to that is I think that we train CPMs from these communities because there is such a sense as not just necessarily cultural competent, but culturally congruent. So we want people
Yeah.
in what a holler is. We want people,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We want people that when I say, out Sissonville or out Sissonville, the difference that when I say out, that means it is far.
Right.
But
Right.
so that they're not going to be swayed by that, or they're going to understand by, so and so's house that hasn't lived there in 15 years, but we still call it so and so's house. That's what we're talking about. And not only are you going to get somebody who understands that particular culture, you're going to get somebody who's going to stay because they are rooted in that area and they're rooted in that culture and they're invested in that community. And I would say that's the other part of midwifery too, is that this should be a community responsibility. We should want for mothers and families to be healthy and strong, and for babies to be born healthy and strong. And not only that, but that they also thrive through postpartum and infancy. Like, this is a community thing that we should be proud of and that we should want to take some responsibility for. And so by having maybe these little hubs, these little birth houses, these little clinics, we could start making this a community responsibility of, oh, somebody's pawpaw down the street comes and mows our grass every Thursday because he just, wants it to look really nice for any of the babies that are coming in, or, this
Right.
person else coming in, or whatever it is. And now we're taking pride, and it's a community ownership thing. And then we can start taking on, oh my gosh, we've had no preterm babies be born. Or, oh my gosh, we've had no blah, 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 blah. But that's also helping the community. And then what happens when all these kids now go to school? What do grades look like? Now do you see what I'm saying? So it's, yes, very cliche of me of like, we change the world one birth at a time, but it's true though.
It is true. It is true.
Birth at a time. And I think that we can do it for the community. It can be a community responsibility. And I just think, like, we have 55 counties in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Each county had its own birth center. For each county had its own birth house, its own clinic. I think this is consistent.
That would solve so many problems if each county had their own birthing center, and everything that you just said is relative to our context here in Appalachia. We are just community oriented people. We care about each other. We want to know what's going on with our neighbor. If there's something that we can do to help our neighbor, we're going to do it. I mean, if that mother has to go to the hospital and she doesn't have childcare, and if we're able, we're going to step up and try to help each other out, no matter what the situation. The mother came home. Oh yeah, we're going to try to fix meals or send something over. Maybe just help her out around the house, whatever it takes. Those are the things that we do as Appalachians when we express to our neighbors that we care, and we want to do better. We are going to be better. And I'm so grateful that this is having a resurgence in West Virginia, and that we can kind of solve some of our own problems by going back to our old ways, looking at our history. And
As much as, I mean, we could say this for the whole world, but we can say it for West Virginia. As much as anybody would disagree or say that, they're not a big proponent of home birth, everybody in West Virginia is a descendant of a home birth, whether they like that or not. It is true. But also, too, geographically, West Virginia, we were doing home births the longest. As far as, we have not been in the hospital that long. We're not that far removed. And mostly that was because we didn't have interstates. We didn't
right,
have to get to a hospital. So midwives or family doctors or somebody down the street who went and helped people have babies, that is how we have gotten. And so really, as proud of West Virginia as West Virginians are, and the history of West Virginia, I'm biased, but this to me is a no-brainer. We should latch on to midwives and home birth as a part of our history that we're proud of, and we should make it excel again. And kind of
yes,
the same issue geographically. It is hard for some people to get to X, Y, and Z. So why do we not do what we've always do and adapt and make it work? And we're gifted in that way that we can do those things. And it goes back to the cultural congruency part of it. We do make midwifery fit for our culture, and that is by having our community come in and step up and do it. Maybe it's very naive, but I think that West Virginia is small enough that it feels like a community, the whole state does, that I think that we would be such a cool pilot project that if we were able to pull this off, and we can do this in West Virginia, then almost any other state could do that. If we are able to do it with the resources that we have, or lack of resources that we have in some areas, and we're able to actually show statistical change, honestly, it would be, we would be unstoppable. And the sky's the limit, but also other states and other places around us would be able to mimic or copy or adapt to their own issues where they're at. And I think that it can be over.
What an amazing dream and goal that is. When I think about West Virginia and someone tells me where they're from, my mind automatically goes to, well, I know this person from that community, or from the next community, or whatever. And I think that's just the way we operate as West Virginians and Appalachians. And what a wonderful thing that would be to build upon, to have birthing centers in every county. Can you tell me a little bit about your current role and what type of facility you work in? And then tell me a little bit about your hopes and dreams.
Very small home birth. It's called Freedom River Midwifery. I've been doing that for about 2 years now. And I take about between 12 to 15 births a year. And as my kids get older, that availability becomes a little bit better, all that different stuff. But I've been doing that. And then there's also another midwife local to me that I go with my sister. So right now that's about my capacity of what what we are able to do. Because CPMs don't have a license here. We do have a birth center in West Virginia, but only nurse midwives can work in that facility. Going back to having CPMs being able to get a license, I think that would be a great use for birth centers. We would be able to fill and put CPMs in these places, and they would be able to practice to their full scope of practice, referring out appropriately, but it would allow a bigger reach and community-based care. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Hopes and dreams. Sometimes, I dream about lots of different things. I don't know. I don't know what my hopes and dreams are right now. My hopes and dreams right now is that we are able to get licensure passed. That we are able to create more Black and brown midwives in West Virginia. And I think my biggest hope is that people that would love access to midwifery care would be able to get that. And I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know how we make that possible, but I believe that this is not necessarily, we're not talking about home birth, but I believe that every person deserves a midwife, no matter what. Every person that wants a midwife deserves a midwife. And so to try to make that accessible to somebody, so that way they're not having to worry about insurance or all of those different things. I think if we were able to make that accessible to whoever wanted it, we would start to see statistical change. I like numbers. So I'd like to see the numbers.
Perfect. Well, I've just got like 2 more questions before we end our conversation. It's been so fascinating to chat with you and to like kind of pick your brain and figure out how you work and how we can do better here in West Virginia. If you had a recommendation for a young person who might be considering this as a career, what would it be?
I think my first question would be, what's their why? What are they getting out of it? Is it because they love babies? Is it love because they love moms? Like, what is their why for wanting to do this work? And then I think once they have it, they'll be able to decide what path they want to go. Do they want to become a CPM? Do they want to work? Do they want to work, when I say outside of the system, just meaning like not in the medical model of care? Is that what they're wanting to do? Would they like to be their own boss? Are they great at hands-on learning? Are they great? Like, if that's the thing that they're thinking of, a CPM route would be fantastic, and they can go to college to become a CPM too. If they are passionate about Maybe they would love to teach one day. They want to, they're maybe in love with medicine, or they want to work in the hospital. They know that they want to work in the hospital, becoming a nurse, becoming a nurse midwife, and working in the hospital. Like we need, this is not a CPM versus CNM or pitting us against each other. This is the midwifery model of care in two different branches of the midwifery care. And we need nurse midwives in the hospital setting because, again, not everybody wants to have a home birth. Not everybody is qualified or a candidate to have a home birth, but we need midwives in the hospital that can give the midwifery model of care, even under maybe not necessarily ideal circumstances, but maybe that's not the way that they had wanted their baby to be born. But we still need someone there to hear them, to see them, and to still give them that model of care. And also, on the same hand, somebody who absolutely wants to be in the hospital, but they still like to have a midwife, we need that too. And I always tell people I'm not against the hospital. It's just that I've decided to practice my specialty of midwifery in the community setting.
Well, once again, I want to thank you for sharing your heart with us today. And before we end our conversation, I want to know in what ways can we support you in your current role? What is it we can do to support you?
Keep praying. But donate. People can donate if people would like to help cover the cost of care for somebody. That would be really helpful. If people have, I kind of think of like if I can reduce my expenses, then I can give more stuff away for free. So if anybody has an office that they want to share with me, I would love that. But no, I would literally say pray that for wisdom and all of those different things, and for clients, even if you don't know who these people are, donate if you can, share resources, and tell people about midwives. Even if you don't feel like you just be like, have you ever heard of a midwife? I don't know anything about it, but I heard of one. And the more that we do that, the more we will normalize it.
Okay. Powerful words. So we're going to pray, we're going to share, we're going to give, we're going to donate, and we're going to talk about the thing. Perfect. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you today. And I just want to say, on behalf of myself, thank you for listening, for spilling the Black Girl Tea. We invite you to check out our other video episodes on our YouTube channel for Justice and Jubilee, and podcast episodes on Accidental Tomatoes. Once again, thanks for listening today.